Welcome back to Auspol Debunks, some myths about the voice. Now here's a big claim: every piece of legislation will need the voice's approval before it can pass. As you can guess by the title of this series, no, that's not true at all. In fact, it's not true on multiple levels. So let's break it down. 1. The voice is an advisory body, so its approval is not necessary in the legislative process. 2. Not every bill is worth the voice's time and effort and resources, so it won't comment on everything. 3. The wording says that the voice may give representations. To make representations, by the way, is to communicate an idea on behalf of a person or group, so that's what it means. That's synonymous with give advice. You too can make representations when you contact a member of parliament or sign a petition, and you too can read the entire text of a bill before it's debated, because that's all public information. So again, that's not really a special right, that's just defining the purpose and function of the voice. And finally, a fact that I'm gonna keep repeating like a broken record here: the voice just doesn't have that power. Nothing in the amendment gives it any kind of legislative or veto power or requirement to be consulted or even give its approval. I do see some people saying that, the fact that it can comment on matters related to Indigenous people can be interpreted to mean literally any bill at all, because if a bill affects people in Australia, Indigenous people live in Australia, therefore that bill affects Indigenous people, and it's related. That's not an accurate way to read that at all. It's up to the voice to make a convincing argument as to why Indigenous people would be specifically affected by a bill. Some bills do have a direct impact, so, if it's to do with land rights or language preservation, that's pretty obvious. The voice will want to be consulted and Parliament will want to consult it. Most bills, however, will have a broad application, and it could be argued that some elements of it have a disproportionate effect on Indigenous people. Like if you were to introduce photo ID for voting. That affects everyone who can vote, but many Indigenous people and communities are in lower socioeconomic areas or remote areas, and that creates barriers for access to these photo IDs. So you can see how it's very broad, but the voice could argue that there are some things that should be taken into consideration to ensure that Indigenous people are not left behind or disenfranchised. And that's fundamentally the purpose of having this broad application of related to Indigenous affairs, because the voice has limited resources and its advice doesn't have legal force. It can't force Parliament to agree with it. So it is, by its very nature, going to limit to things that it has the actual time and effort and desire to focus on that would have a meaningful impact. And if you don't define the very specific things, it gives the voice, the independence to bring forward the perspective that is lacking from Parliament, right? It's a bunch of people with different cultural backgrounds and, limited time to examine Indigenous issues. But if we have a dedicated advisory body full of Indigenous people, they can be like, oh, here are some things, we have that lived experience, we talk and have the resources to spend all our time talking to Indigenous people, we can see something that you might have overlooked. And so instead of getting into a court battle about the definition of what counts as Indigenous affairs, it is up to independently Indigenous people to decide, hey, this is worth our time and effort to make a point about. They're not just going to just comment on everything. So things like, should we buy more submarines, or should we have this tariff with China? That's just not relevant to the voice. There is no incentive for the voice to comment on this and use up its time and resources. There's no way you could justify to Parliament to listen to it talk about these topics. And if it just continuously talks about things that clearly are not within its wheelhouse, well, you don't even need a court case to tell it to be quiet. You could just ignore it, and that would then just devalue the institution. It would make it less effective, and it would just not be good for anyone. And the members of the voice who make frivolous arguments are just going to lose their jobs because they're accountable to the Indigenous people that put them there. So not only is its approval not required to pass every single bill, it doesn't even have the time or motivation or desire to talk on every single bill. That would be pointless. It doesn't even need to be a constitutional restriction, it's just a practical one. So that's not really a concern. I hope you've enjoyed, maybe learned a few things, maybe allayed some concerns you've had, or helped you address and explain to other people why they have become susceptible to misinformation. I hope we all work together to dispel myths and help us be informed voters when we go to decide whether or not this should or should not be in the Constitution. It's up to us collectively. Thank you so much for tuning in. Comment down below what you would like to learn about next. Subscribe, share with someone who you know needs to learn a thing or two, and thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon. I'll see you next time.